we are very honored to have in our midst the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. The Honorable Mr. Pierre is becoming well known in just less than 1 year of being Prime Minister as a Prime Minister who is committed to putting people first. It is therefore very fitting that at the launch of a project called Build Back Equal, with the kinds of principles that that project stands for, that we would identify a leader such as the Honorable Philip J. Pierre to address us, to deliver the feature address at such a launch. Honorable Philip J. Pierre has been in the business of national development, serving as a parliamentarian from 1997, and he advanced to assume the leadership of the party and led that party, the St. Lucia Labour Party, to victory at the polls last year and assumed the Prime Ministership of St. Lucia. It is therefore an honor to invite the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, to deliver the feature address.
Good morning, everyone. Let me recognize Dr. Virginia Albert Poyot, the Minister for the Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor and Gender Affairs, the Honorable Wayne Girard, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and the Youth Economy. Let me also recognize Mr. Didier Tribuc, the Ambassador, the High Commissioner to Canada, other members of the head table, invited guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. 2 weeks ago, in my maiden budget policy address to the Parliament of St. Lucia, I stated that putting people first was not just a campaign slogan for my party while in opposition. It was a philosophy, it was a belief, it was a way of life. It was a fundamental belief in social justice and wealth creation. A belief that every man, woman, and child should have the opportunity to reach their full potential. And today, a few days later, I've been invited to address, and I want to add, not to give the feature address, to address you at the launch of the Build Back Equal project, which is led by the UN Women, MCO, and UNFPA. The fact that we recognize that we need to build back, but the inclusion of the word equal signifies that inequality exists, even before we start to build back. As I understand it, this project was conceptualized and designed with a new approach to ensure that most of the weaknesses of past interventions were taken into account. It will be rolled out to address the pressing social and economic needs of women, and the marginalized women in particular, in the 4 OECS countries, including St. Lucia, in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. I note that the topic suggests that there is great similarity between the focus of this project and the philosophy of my government's development thrust. That is, putting people at the center of development. But putting people at the center of development has become more complicated, particularly after the COVID pandemic. It's complicated because as governments in very small countries, we have to battle between financial ratios, between satisfying the needs of debt to GDP ratios, between satisfying the requirements of international financial institutions that do not recognize our smallness and do not recognize our vulnerability. So as policymakers, I'll give you an example as we speak. The price of goods and services, particularly food, is increasing. It's increasing at a level that every day it increases. There's a call, a genuine call, and also call by people who want to create mischief, political mischief, that government should in some way cause the price of food to decrease, even if they understand that the circumstances that caused the increase has nothing to do with government. But listen to the problems that we have to deal with. To continue the services, government services, you need to collect revenue. You need to collect duties, you need to collect VAT, etc. The only intervention that government can make to reduce the price of food is by lessening the duties, removing VAT, or causing some reduction in the price, in the cost of freight, which government cannot do because of the supply chain issues. So the problem we face in government, as government, is how do you balance the need for revenue and the need to improve the quality of life of people and the need to reduce the cost of food. And you tell that to people in the international financial institutions, and they do not really understand that. I delivered a budget on the 26th of July, and I can tell you directly the people it will affect. I can tell you their names, I know where they live, and how it will affect them. So the smallness of these countries, our countries have to be treated differently because of our smallness and our vulnerabilities. Any morning, after a hurricane, half of the country can literally disappear. It has happened in Dominica, it has happened in Grenada, in St. Lucia after Thomas it happened. So we need, and I'm very happy that these organizations who are putting this project together have understood the need to treat us differently. We are calling for different treatment as compared to what is given out to larger countries. The COVID pandemic made it worse. The COVID pandemic has taught us some very useful lessons. It has exposed in a manner never seen before the naked, disadvantageous position of the most marginalized persons among us, particularly our women. It reinforced the need for enhanced safety nets and much better evidence-based interventions, which should be driven by a better understanding of the beneficiaries of development. The pandemic made us realize that it cannot be business as usual, that we should be better prepared for any future disruptions. It brought to the fore the need for innovative and flexible interventions and for governments, development agencies, social partners, and private sector to pull their resources together to impact the lives of the beneficiaries of development assistance. It also exposed the vast differences in the quality of life of the different social and economic groups in St. Lucia and in the region. Example, the ability for students at home to find devices so they can access education. That disparity was stark in that the majority of children in this country, particularly in my constituency, had neither devices nor access. So you find you are developing a culture is developed after COVID, unless we can build back equally, where these children have lost most likely 2 or 3 years of their education because there was no access to devices. And this is what we have to understand. And this is why we must understand that people, the opportunities are there, but the opportunities are not equal. So we have to level the playing field so that each child can have at least access to a better education and a better quality of life. And this is why projects like this one are very important and relevant at this time. The ILO, in a document called Labor Overview, noted that after 2 years of the crisis, the region faces high unemployment and the prospect of an increase in informality. The regional director noted that labor outlook is uncertain. The persistence of infections due to the pandemic and the prospects of mediocre economic growth this year could prolong the unemployment crisis until 2023 or even 2024. It further notes that unemployment that is too long is worrying because it generates discouragement and frustration, which in turn has repercussions on social stability and on government. And I'm going to just bring your mind to the employment that is available now for most of our women. And don't hold it against me because I have nothing against it. Employment in the cruise industry. What's happening there is a number of our mothers, young mothers, have to leave their children to seek employment in the cruise industry. So they are away from their children for 6, 9 months, sometimes a year. And the impact of that must be judged. And the evidence, and this is why I'm happy that your project deals with evidence, the evidence of that dislocation in the lives of our children must be measured because it may have some serious dislocation for the generation that is coming when the parents have to leave them. Their mothers, most of the time, their mothers have to leave them to work outside the country, to work on cruise ships for 9 or so months in a year. In St. Lucia, unemployment among women is high. Generally, it's about 20% in the entire country. And that unemployment got worse with the closure of the hotels and restaurants where most women were employed. And again, the impact of that is telling. The level of frustration that has built up, the feeling of neglect, the feeling of that I've given up is something that we have to try to restore, to make people understand that the world is not all bad and there is hope. And projects like your projects, your project will bring back the hope, will bring back the idea that people matter and somebody cares. And I want to really congratulate you for dealing with the sector of our economy, the sector of our population that is at risk. But while we are dealing with marginalized people, we must not forget the marginalized young men, which is a serious issue. In St. Lucia, the average age of the inmates at Bordelais is possibly not 30, younger than 30. If you visit Bordelais, it could be any high school. It could be any high school where young men at school. And we have to find that balance. Because what is happening is that our boys, our young men, are becoming increasingly more desperate, increasingly more violent, and they will turn on us and will turn on our women. This is why in St. Lucia, we passed a domestic violence bill. Not as a deterrent, yes, but to bring to the core that there is domestic violence and we need to have some level of intervention to stop that level of abuse of our women. So we have a twofold situation where you have to deal with marginalized women, marginalized men. But in the final analysis, we have to deal with people. So I hope that we do not forget our men. Our men at risk, they are at serious risk. And if our society doesn't understand that both genders must together aspire and together improve their situation, we are heading for difficult times. So I want to thank you for making St. Lucia the venue. I know my colleagues in Dominica, Grenada, and St. Vincent are also involved in this project. I'm sure I could not give a feature address. I just tried to share some ideas with you. I hope you forgive me, but I think it is very important that I mentioned what I think is my basic philosophy and my reason why I have taken this step to be in the politics of St. Lucia for a very long time, to deal with people, to improve the lives of the people of this country. This is why our interventions in small business, and for the first time for many years, the government of St. Lucia is seeking financing of $10 million for small and medium-sized enterprises. Most of these enterprises are owned by women. We've made direct interventions in women to get women involved in business, direct interventions to cause people to improve their lives. But that happens at a great cost. As Minister of Finance, we have to balance the budget. We have to see about our debt to GDP ratio. We have a program of home care, where, and I see the PS in the Ministry of Equity, right, and I want to thank her for the work she's been doing so far. We have a home care program, and it is really touching to see how these elderly people, our program runs from Monday to Friday, and some of these elderly people, when the home caregiver leaves the home on Friday, they do not come back until Monday morning. And these people have absolutely no one to take care of them. And it really is heartbreaking. And when I visit these people, you feel very emotional. But what can I do? We've budgeted $7 million for that project. All we need is another $1 million so that we can extend that care to weekends. But to find that $1 million, to find that $1 million, and no offense meant, but I understand that, but we can find $319 billion US for a war. We can find in a world of great inequality, we can find in less than 8 weeks, $319 billion for a war. And that war, nothing to do with us, but we are suffering immensely because of it. Nothing to do with us. Our food prices have gone up, our fuel prices have gone up, but nothing to do with us. But to find, I'll tell you something. Do you know what $1 billion would do for the entire region? $319 billion for a war. 1 billion of these dollars multiplied by our exchange rate, 2.7, is $2.7 billion. That would cure all the problems of the entire OECS, and we will not know what to do with money. But does anyone understand that? Does anyone really understand that? So I'm thankful and grateful for that intervention, and I hope that our unique situation, our situation of vulnerability, a situation that our young girls and our women find themselves, a situation where they cannot, where they feel frustrated, where they have to subject themselves to abuse just to feed their families. I hope that that program and these programs will help alleviate it to an extent. I thank you very much.